Hi, guys. Welcome to the COVID Commentary SLC. I want to thank you guys for joining us tonight. We've got a jam-packed show for you. Also, we went ahead and started a Facebook page where we're going to be posting all of our links and probably some additional posts to get some conversation started. If you hear anything on the show that you want to reference deeper, then go ahead and check out our Facebook page, and we'll have all these links, and plus probably a whole bunch of ones that we didn't end up touching on. We'll have all those there. So, CJ, you want to tell the listeners where they can find us on Facebook?
So if you just search for the COVID commentary, that's SLC. COVID commentary SLC.
That's great. It's kind of frustrating because me and CJ were talking for like half an hour before this, but now that we started the show, it seems like it's cutting out a little bit. But I know the listeners will at least be able to hear the good version because it saves it on each of our computers. So yeah, we'll have some connection issues, but you guys will definitely hear the whole thing. So we'll work all that out in the end. So we'll just start right off by jumping into the numbers this week. We are currently at about 1.7 million cases. I know on our first show, when we first started doing this, we were at about 300,000. And so, we're continuing that exponential growth. We just barely broke 100,000 deaths today. And as we'll get into a little later on in the show, I think that I'm seeing a lot of evidence to show that the deaths are probably being undercounted in a lot of different areas and states and countries. So we'll get into that a little bit later. I mean, we probably won't really know the actual death rate until this whole thing is over, possibly a year or two over, until people can go back and look at the history of this virus with a more unbiased view, because right now all of these numbers have so much weight on them. Every country is heavily motivated to make the numbers look a certain way. So anytime in any situation where there's that kind of bias, you can't really trust the info. But hopefully we get some people looking back on it in a historical perspective who can look back on it with unbiased views, and who can possibly add in the deaths that we're seeing from kind of secondary deaths where people are dying because they can't get access to hospitals or other things like that. And there's also some people that aren't dying that normally would have died because there's a lot less cars on the road. There's a lot less people going to bars and getting drunk and falling off a bridge into a river. So there is that to add it into it as well. So it's going to be interesting to see exactly what the real death rate will be looking back on it in the future.
Well, yeah, and the one thing you have to think about too is they've made it quite clear that the government and any other country that are pretty much not counting people that die at home. And that just seems to frustrate me.
Yeah, I've heard that with several different places. I mean, we know for an absolute fact that China's deaths is off by at least 10 times, minimum of 10 times. I mean, we're losing it at almost as many people in the U.S. per day than China supposedly lost in this whole thing. They're saying they lost about 3,000, and we're losing 2,000 a day. So there's just absolutely no way that adds up. And we're seeing traces in the media where they're saying, yeah, we don't trust China's numbers, but I feel like they're not talking about it as much as they should, because there's kind of still this narrative going around that, oh, China got it under control. It wasn't that bad in China. China had a fairly low death rate. And if they call China out on their BS, then it's going to ruin that narrative and expose the truth that we really have no good country to look at to see how this ends. Like there's no country in which that's, gotten this under control. And we definitely can't trust China. But what you were talking about, I have you actually sent me this in the chat almost a week ago, and it's talking about the New York deaths, because obviously in the U.S. we've been seeing the most amount of deaths in New York, and this is on the Worldometer's website, so it's a pretty.
One of those positive cases is a second employee at the Amazon Salt Lake City fulfillment center.
1 second.
ABC.
Okay, yeah. So in New York, like I said, this is on the Worldometer's website, so it's pretty pretty accurate source. I actually went and traced down the source, and it's a New York official posting on Twitter about this. And it says an estimated additional 180 to 195 deaths per day occurring at home in New York City due to COVID-19. So I believe New York is racking up like 800 deaths per day or 1,000 deaths per day, somewhere around there. And so there's an additional 180 to 195 that's happening that they're not counting because they simply do not have the testing capacity for the large numbers dying at home, which I know we have a whole lot of tests, and we're probably testing a whole lot of people, but it's probably still not quite enough tests.
Well, you got to think that the amount of tests that we've put out there, even just in the U.S., if you look at the total of tests, quote unquote, that they say that we've done, you have, 2.5 million tests. But on another level, 502,000 of those ended up being positive cases. So you're talking about a fifth of all the tests that ended up positive. That to me is pretty concerning.
Yeah, that's 20%. And obviously we're testing the people that we think have it rather than just testing the random population. So probably less than 20% of the population, well, definitely less than 20% of the population has it. But yeah, I mean, there's just so many people. If we were really going to get a hold on this, we would need to test basically everyone in the whole United States and then test them again next week too, to make sure they don't have it again. So, I mean, that would be like over 300 million tests per week. And we've only done 2.5 million total in the US. And I'm not talking shit on anything, that's still a lot of tests. Obviously the manufacturing's been pretty good, but it's just, and the fact that we're getting 30,000 plus cases every day in the US just really shows how we kind of messed this up at the beginning. There was people, like even I was kind of saying, I told my mom when this was first starting happening, I was like, any day now we're going to see an absolute explosion in the US, because there was this period where it was spreading in other countries and we hadn't ramped our testing up yet. So it only would have made logical sense that we would see an explosion in cases in the US, given we have a fairly large population and given the fact that we just didn't respond early enough.
Yeah, I mean, we were so optimistic as a country. I mean, I guess not all of us, obviously, but, the way that we looked at it was, okay, this is affecting China and Europe, and we're nothing like them, so it's not going to affect us that way. Whereas, on the contrary, turn it around, it's affected us. I think it's affected us worse than any other country, my personal opinion. And with our total deaths, I mean, we're almost to the most deaths. I mean, we're 100 and not even 100 like deaths away from being the top deaths in the world. And when you look at something like that and the amount of cases that have come up positive, like we keep going back to, you have to look at the number of recovered people. There's only 27,000 cases that have been recovered in the U.S. out of the 502,000 cases. Like, it's just ridiculous. Like, it's just going to continue to spread. People are going to, it's not something that's going to be wiped under the rug come May 1st. Like, this thing is not going to go away after Easter. It's not going to go away next month. It's not going to go away the month after that. We're probably going to be dealing with this thing, I mean, until, late September, October, and then that's if we get control on it. And if we don't get control on it, then we're just going to see a new surge as the time starts clicking again.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm hearing more and more bad news about this, about the whole herd immunity and about just reaching immunity in general. I mean, we have zero evidence saying that once you get this, you can't get it again. There's no evidence that's proving that point yet. But yet, obviously it's really early to kind of, make any full conclusions about that. But we are seeing some evidence that you can get this and then a week or a month goes by and you can get it again. And I just barely watched the latest of Chris Martinson's podcast, which I would highly recommend. I'm going to talk about Chris Martinson a lot, probably every single show, because he's the best resource that I have. And he is saying, because obviously this is a coronavirus, and we've dealt with many coronaviruses in the past. This one just seems to be way more deadly than the rest of them. But usually what happens with the coronavirus is you get it, and then you have like a month or two where you can't get it again, where you develop those antibodies, and then the antibodies start to go away, and then you can get it again. So that's why you can get, the common cold, which is, I think, like 30% of the common colds that you get end up being one of the 4 types of coronaviruses out there. That's why you can get it over and over again, because you just never really get a real full immunity to it. And I don't believe that's with the flu. That's, that happens because the flu changes so fast. It's different every year. The coronavirus, all the coronaviruses, they don't change as fast as the flu, but yet the antibodies in your body just don't persist for years and years and years. So you can end up getting it, but luckily it doesn't morph nearly as fast as the flu, which has some implications about the vaccine. And I don't know if there's no for sure guarantee that there is a vaccine that we'll be able to make that will make this thing go away. And considering those two things and then projecting out into the future really gives you a really concerning outlook on the future. I mean, with how destructive this has been already, I mean, we haven't lost millions and millions of people, so that's good, but we've shut everything down. All large gatherings are just non-existent now. Our economy cannot continue like this. Every single day that we go like this is another shot to the nuts of our economy. And how many times you get kicked in the nuts before you can't have a baby anymore? That's where our economy is at right now. And so it's just, the future is, and I don't like to sugarcoat things here. Obviously, if you're listening to our show, you're more of a realist rather than optimist, because we're not too optimistic about everything here. But looking out into the future, I just want to say there is no clear path out of this yet. Science is still growing, but it's all just a mystery right now. And this could, I say we're pretty much guaranteed to go for a year of dealing with this. Could kind of slow down in the summer. There's some evidence to say that it slows in the summer, but it's spreading in countries with all sorts of different climates all across the world. It's spreading, but it seems to be going slower in the hotter countries. It seems to be, that could be, lack of testing or something, but yeah, we're going to be dealing with this for quite a while.
And I mean, we're going to be dealing with it beyond. I mean, once we get this thing under control, I won't even say once we find a cure, once we get a vaccine, once we get it under control, like I keep saying, like, our basic way of life is not going to go back to normal. Like, places that, like supermarkets, they're going to keep being as sanitary as they are. They're going to keep making you wipe every single cart. They're going to give people, I've gone into places where they've given me gloves. Like, I just went into Smith's today and actually applaud Salt Lake City because I saw more masks today than I think I've seen since the beginning of this thing.
Yeah, same. I did too.
It's incredible, but it may be a little bit too late. I don't know if you've been out and about at all, but I've noticed a lot of the homeless population have been popping up more and more. And I do have, a certain opinion range on that, just because, I mean, really, in Salt Lake, the homeless have no place to go, and they don't have very sanitary conditions whatsoever. So once this thing starts, spreading through, people like that, you have a lot of our homeless and a lot of our lower income people that are out and about and have to walk and have to take public transit, and then, regardless, they're still walking into these grocery stores. They're still, walking in to, get their oil changed, or, people that are, not very sanitary and that aren't up on their scale of life, are still, there's still certain stuff that they have to take care of. So even if you are like, figure that you're doing okay, that your health's good, and that, you have nothing to worry about. I mean, even my little brother today he was like, he was laughing at me because I was pissed I didn't have my mask. And he's like, it's not that big of a deal. I don't think we'll get sick. And if we get sick, then, we won't end up dying from it. We'll just end up getting sick, and then we'll get over it. And I looked at him and I'm like, what about the people that you would get sick? You got to think about that. Like, you're going to infect, 30 other people if you get it. Like, I feel like there's no, 1-to-2 ratio. It's definitely, with how physical people are in the world today, it's a lot more than just, 1-to-2. It's going to be 1-to-10, 1-to-20. Even with, this lockdown, people are, supposed to stay home and stuff. And I mean, I still see people out and about. People are still meeting up with their friends to do stuff. I mean, it's it's not going to slow down if people don't just chill, take it easy, do the necessities, and then, go home. Eat at home the most you can. Like, it's 100% healthier and hell of a lot cheaper. And then you don't have to worry about getting germs. When you go to the store, plan your meals for the next week straight. It's not rocket science to do things to where you can avoid situations that are going to possibly infect you or infect your family or people or your friends, loved ones, anything.
Yeah, and we're here in Utah, and we've been getting some of the lowest case counts in all the U.S. lately. Definitely some of the lowest deaths, and also we've been doing some of the highest testing. So if you take all those numbers seriously, then things are actually looking pretty good here in Utah, which kind of creates this narrative here that everything's fine, because a lot of people aren't looking at the numbers like you and me are. They're just kind of looking around themselves and maybe seeing what Trump's saying. And they're seeing that everything is seeming like it's all right. We're not hearing any crazy stories from the hospital. We're not seeing huge amounts of death. So it seems like if the numbers are true and we're not, and a lot of this stuff isn't being hidden, then things are going fairly good in Utah, which says a lot about the social distancing that we are doing. And like you said, you saw quite a few people with masks. I went to Smith's today. I wore my mask out for the first time. And I saw probably about half the people there with the mask. Yeah, about half the people with the mask. And so, yeah, that's that. And I was I was feeling a little weird at first. And then as soon as I saw someone else with a mask, I was like, oh, okay, no, we're good. We're good. And then I saw like 20, 30 other people with masks. And I was like, okay, wow, this is pretty impressive. I don't, I think, even if this goes on, as long as we're saying, if Utah continues to do what we're doing, then we could never really enter into that dangerous zone where the hospital's overwhelmed. That's really the one big thing that we're trying to stop with this slowing the curve, is the hospital's getting overwhelmed. If we could go throughout this whole time, and the economy is just, I mean, it's such a house of cards waiting to crash. It's just going to take a huge hit on this, no matter how we look at it. There's no way this is going to be ending very soon. And the economy is on the chopping block when it comes to extending this out. So that's going to happen. I mean, they're going to have to print more money than we've ever seen in our whole life. I have an article here. Maybe we'll flow right into this. It's the weekly jobless claims, which I've been keeping a close eye on. The 2 weeks ago, we broke the record massively by having 3.2 million jobless claims in 1 week. And then the following week, we broke the record again by double, reaching 6.6 million jobless claims in a week. And then now that was actually revised up to 6.8, which the revisions, the way that the U.S. works, we put out data and then we always revise it to be worse. So the revisions are always worse than the actual thing. And then we had another 6.6 million this week, which will probably be revised to be worse. So we're currently at 16 million Americans have lost their jobs in the last 3 weeks. If you compare those claims to the 151 million people on payroll in the last employment report, that means the U.S. has lost over 10% of the workforce in 3 weeks. And this is all around the world right now. This is not a U.S. only phenomenon. This is happening all across the world to this degree, or worse in most other major countries.
Yeah, it's one of those things that we're going to take a major hit. Excuse me, not the corona. But when you look at that bigger picture, when it's 10% of our working force, that's a huge chunk. When there's 320 million people in the United States or something like that. Like, you got to figure, we'll say, 70% of them are the working class, just because there's people on unemployment and whatnot. But if you're losing 10% in what you said 3 weeks, then it's only going to be a bigger number to come, because this is 3 weeks where companies have gotten these little loans that they've taken out to try to keep afloat, and that the government's trying to take care of them, which kudos to them there. But it's kind of like trying to get a dead ox to push a wagon, or pull a wagon. Like, eventually it's not going to pull anything. Like, you can't keep feeding these companies money that aren't doing anything. Most places are shut down.
Yeah, it's like, sorry to bust in on your metaphor, but it's basically like if you had an ox pulling a wagon, and then you cut off one of the ox's legs and you threw that into the wagon, because the unemployment people, the people who are still employed now have to make up for the people who are unemployed. So it's kind of like the ox is not only missing a leg, it now has to pull its leg in the wagon.
For sure. Which, when you think about it, that's like essentially like setting yourself up to drown. Like, you're gonna hit a river. you're gonna hit something you have to cross, and that's not gonna get you across anything.
Yeah, and the whole economy is being supported with printed money, and I'm going to talk about this a lot because I feel like it's one of the most overlooked and misunderstood things, that especially for the people that follow politics, because they get you caught up in the drama of the politics so much that you totally overlook what these bills they're passing are actually calling for. The only thing the House and the Senate are going to be doing from 3 weeks ago to the next couple months from now are going to be passing bailouts. That's their entire job right now. That's all anyone's heard them do. The meetings they've been meeting up for to take votes on, it's all about how much money are we going to create. That's the only topic they have to talk about. And that money is absolutely needed. If we think about it, a regular person would probably say we shouldn't really be able to create money. Like, we should have kind of a fixed value of money that, that way our dollar isn't constantly losing value, and the people in power don't have unlimited power because they get to create the money. And if you look at these bills, which nobody's reading, they're 700-800 pages long. I'm hearing some things like they don't even have time to read them. That by the time the bill gets announced and they voted on it, it's like 20 or 30 minutes after it gets announced. So the people in the House, the Democrats and the Republicans, really don't even look over this thing. The Democrats and the Republicans are just asking the people that own them, hey, what do you want to get on this bill? Money's being passed out. What do you want me to put on this bill? And they all have these little foundations and secret little side companies with noble names like the Liberty Fund or some bullshit like that makes it sound like it's a real thing.
One of those positive cases is a second employee at the Amazon Salt Lake City.
I'm just going to close that shit. It keeps popping in for no reason.
He's not a guest on the show, I promise.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
No, I was going to say, I was actually looking at some numbers while you were while you were talking about all that. And I don't know if you checked out that usdebtclock.org that I sent you, but you could actually fast forward in time, and it gives you just a prediction just of what things look like. Yeah, and it looks like we would be from right now. So right now we're at like 24 trillion, almost 25 trillion in debt, and in 4 years we'll be 36 trillion, which I think makes a lot of sense with the direction we're going, and the fact that I think that's a projection that our dollar is just going to lose a lot of its value.
Yeah, and that 24 that debt is such a confusing thing, because that 24 trillion, it's talking about just the bond debt, just the bonds that the Federal Reserve has issued. And so they've they've issued quite a bit this year. The Fed's balance sheet has gone up by 2 trillion in the past month, which is just massive. But that's only 2 trillion. We've talked of over 10 trillion in different stimulus already. And that kind of gets added onto the debt in weird sort of ways that I don't fully understand. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that debt clock is probably not even counting all of because it's probably using an equation to kind of project us into the future with how much we've been growing, but it's not taking into account the coronavirus and how every single day now there's a new bailout announced. Just an incomprehensible amount of money. And yeah, I don't think the debt clock is calculating the fact that we're in the midst of a crisis where we got 10% and growing employment, and that basically for the next couple months the economy is just running on printed money.
Yeah, and it's sad. That's like I don't know, it's like not running on renewable energy. It's like something that's going to run out. It's like you can't fuel all of that with just money. It doesn't work that way.
Exactly. And I mean, we've been really stepping up our printing game ever since 2008, and there's kind of this mood going around of some of the more sophisticated financial people I listen to. There's this mood that they can actually just do this and it's not going to cause any major inflationary forces, because it kind of worked in 2008. We had this massive financial crisis and we created all this money, and it happened in such a way where it kind of made it seem like everything went back to normal and was fine. Little did we know, we actually just created massive amounts of moral hazard, because all of the bad practices now just learned that they can continue their bad practices and they're going to get bailed out at the first sign of trouble. And that's exactly what we've seen throughout this crisis. It's insane because basically all these companies and banks and hedge funds, which hedge funds don't do well, I don't know if it's all of them, but some of them, they don't do anything for the economy. They literally just take advantage of this difference between two different numbers, and they're basically just extracting wealth from the economy without creating any value whatsoever. They don't do anything that's functional. They just take advantage of the change of numbers. So it's really not a vital part of the economy, yet they were one of the first ones to get bailed out. Why? Because they're part of this revolving door relationship with the Fed and the government, where people from the Fed and from the government, they basically, once they're done with their term, they join as heads of chairs in these companies, and then now they have special privilege, and it's all just working to benefit the people that are closest to the newly printed money. And yeah, it's just I think, like I said, there's a lot of people that think that this is going to work again, and they're a lot smarter than I am, but I just don't think that, I think there's going to be a breaking point. There's going to be something that even the smartest people can't see coming, and it's got to lead to some type of hyperinflation, especially if we see a shortage in anything that people need, a shortage in food, a shortage in just anything that people buy on a daily basis, because then there's going to be a massive, because the money's out there. The money has been created. It's out there. The reason we haven't seen too much inflation yet is because it hasn't been chasing the things that everyday consumers buy, like food and stuff. Matter of fact, food and the regular stuff that we buy has been getting cheaper and cheaper because we've been outsourcing it to other countries. So that's kind of been hiding the inflation. But if there's any hint of that stuff being hard to get, then incomprehensible amounts of money is going to come out of hiding and start flooding towards the stuff that we need to survive.
Yeah, and I mean, it's kind of one of the things I was going to talk about too that I've noticed recently. The last 2 times now, I've gone out and I've been able to find toilet paper, which I was very happy about. So I mean, I wonder if people are actually starting to stock up on stuff that's realistic since they have plenty of toilet paper now.
Yeah, I've been seeing some things go around on Facebook of people trying to return the toilet paper now. And so we can all feel it. There's this mood going around that everything's turning out okay. I mean, the markets, are you kidding me? They have gone up from the Dow went from 18K all the way up to like 24K now. That's like, it's halfway back to where it used to be because of all the printed money. But people believe that shit. They think that this is actually getting better and that the market's getting better and that everything's going to be getting better. And then they're just blasting that on anywhere people can look, this optimistic view. And then people who bought all the, first of all, anyone that bought a ton of toilet paper is dumb. But the people that started stocking up on stuff is probably like, oh man, I was dumb. I probably shouldn't have done that. Look, everything's, the numbers are already kind of leveling off. Everything's looking like it's going to be fine. Let me see if I can go return some of this stuff. And I've heard that the stores have actually been denying them, not letting them return it, which, good for them. But people got to realize that we are just at the beginning of this. And I'm probably going to be saying that for months to come. That we're, for maybe probably next month, I'll still be saying we're still at the beginning of this because that's the timeline that I'm thinking of.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, that's the thing, too. Those people that decided to stock up on non-essentials, and I mean, yeah, the people definitely that are going to try to return shit are probably the ones that are running out of money, too, that are just hoping and praying for that check to come any day.
Yeah, I feel bad kind of for the average American that doesn't understand finance because, what I kind of picture is a regular guy just doing his best, maybe finally getting shit together in his life, going to his job, finally getting a little bit of money and then it's like coronavirus. Oh, okay, well, no big deal. And next thing you know, it's like, wow, my job's lost. And they are kind of going through the motions as if this is like a real loss for them. And, and they don't understand that basically the government is just printing all this money and just handing it out. And that money is it's just like monopoly money now. But to them, they are really stressing about paying their bills and, they got credit card debt stacking up. It's ruining their credit score. And what I would say to that person is just, try to just not stress out about it too much. Basically, their whole nation's finance is going to be going through some really turbulent times. And we're just one little sand on the beach, the infinite beach. We're just one little particle of sand in that. And, nobody gives a shit if you can't pay your house payment. Nobody gives a shit if you can't pay your car payment during this. Nobody gives a shit if your credit score is getting ruined. There's so much bigger things going on right now. Obviously, do your best to keep your finances in order, but make sure you have some food. Make sure that you have what you actually need to survive the next 6 months. That's what's important right now. Can you actually physically stay in your house right now and have enough to survive? We don't know if there's going to be food supply disruptions or anything. There may be, there may not be. But for sure, they're not going to be taking your house. No one's going to be kicking you out of your place. No one's going to come take your car. Credit scores is basically irrelevant during this. All of that shit, we're either going to have to deal with it as a nation, or we're going to have to have some kind of reset. So try not. I know I'm definitely not stressed about it too much. I'm feeling the effects financially quite a bit, but that's how I see it anyway.
Yeah, I'm expecting like a semi-global forgiveness bill that basically is just like, look, you're cool, you don't owe me anything, I don't owe you anything. Let's just pick it up where we were before all this bullshit happened. Because I mean, one of the things I was thinking about just now as you were talking too is like the people that are really running around like scratching their heads or with their like chickens with their heads chopped off, or people in the entertainment industry. Like none of these people can go out and do concerts that they get paid usually millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars to do each night. And same thing with movies. Even movie theaters, AMC is going to be gone. There is no such thing as AMC theaters anymore. If you guys have an AMC gift card out there, you're fucked. You can't use it for anything. Congratulations. Because now that's one of those companies that are gone. And it's not going to be the only one we're going to see. There's going to be places that are going to have to be shut down for an extended period of time. Like, I mean, there's places like Radio Shack that are still trying to hold on. Like, Radio Shack's screwed. They're probably going to go down too. Like, it's like, other than like it's going to be real sad because a lot of these mom and pop shops are just going to, they can't stay up with their rent. You can't pay rent on a building that's not making you money. And eventually, these landlords need to get paid, or they want to get paid. There's no such forgiveness for, long term down the road. Like you said, they're going to keep putting out new bills, and that's going to keep resulting in just more of this monopoly money being printed. Therefore, just kind of giving this false hope, it's just our ox with the chopped leg. It's just chopping off another leg and saying, okay, let's see if you can't keep moving this way or keep doing this. Like, it's setting us up for failure. There's got to be, like I said, there's got to be a forgiveness bill, at least definitely within our economy for each citizen. And I mean, I feel like it would be down to like a 4 to 5, 6 month forgiveness period for any interest acquired during that time, or for any any late fees that people were charging you for your rent. Because I know that they're trying to pass something to where they can't evict you, and certain states are doing that, to where they said basically you can't evict anybody, but they're still being charged rent. So after the end of all this, they're going to be handed a bill for $5,000, $6,000, and their stimulus check's going to be long gone, and their taxes are going to be long gone, and they're going to be stuck with these heavy bills. Like, there has to be a realistic way of handling the fall of the economy, resulting in the fall of general way of life. Like, you're taking away people, like you're talking about people losing their homes. People are going to start like running out of money for just basic needs. Like, I wouldn't put it past a lot of these Uber drivers, Lyft drivers, a lot of these people don't want to get in other people's cars that they don't know, or a total stranger's car, and that everybody is losing. Everybody's losing, and in return, the government should see it as everybody's losing, not, oh shit, we're losing, now we should fix it so we look okay and so we can stay afloat. But it's not the way to go about it. There just has to be a smoother way.
Exactly. I mean, but the government and all the corporations that own the government have been running that way, of self-interest, of highest profits for themselves. They've been running that way for decades. So that's literally all they know, is how to take advantage of the system and how to take advantage of crisis. So these guys, they're going to throw us some bones, but it's going to pale in comparison to the amount of bones that they're throwing themselves. Every time they throw us a scrap, they're getting a full turkey dinner. And this is going to happen over and over and over, because like you said, we can't just go months without producing anything and then get slapped with a $5,000 bill. I mean, that would set off a chain reaction of collapse, starting through the mortgage payments. And then, the mortgage people wouldn't be able to pay the people above them. And, that just can't happen. And right now we have this kind of view that money is the fuel that runs the economy. And you know what? In a healthy economy, that's true. But, money cannot fix this problem in any way, shape, or form. Matter of fact, it can make it much worse if you create too much money, because it can create a complete loss in the trust in our currency system. The real lifeblood of the economy is the products and services and food. And, we definitely need to keep all of that running to the highest degree possible. And it's, but I do see there being some disruptions in the very things that we need to survive.
Well, and even as we were talking about before the show, I said distress, mental distress calls are up 839%. Like, this thing's not going to be over tomorrow, and it's not going to be over next month. So we're going to, I know that a lot of people did laugh at Trump's, oh yeah, well, we're going to see lots of suicides and lots of this, but I would not put it past that, and they're not going to count those deaths as, deaths that were caused by the coronavirus. But when all of a sudden, you're living paycheck to paycheck, and then you lose it all, you can't pay your bills, and you're using your credit card to, take care of your family and do whatever, you're trying to pick up a job wherever you can't find anything, then everything's shut down. So then you can't find a job. Now you're out of money. Now you're out of food in your house. But then on top of that, your landlord's letting you live there, but he's charging you that entire time. So then all of a sudden, you come out the end of this COVID-19 crisis, and you're $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 in debt, and then depending on what you owe for your cars, on top of everything else, there's going to be a huge decrease in just general happiness. We're not going to come out of this all smiling. We're going to be wiping dust off our clothes. We're going to be burned and all ratted. It's not going to be a pretty picture when we come out of this, and a lot of people are going to be really, really depressed. And God, there's very few things that I could say. I pray that the government just does some sort of, like I said, forgiveness package. Just throw it out there, fucking bam. You know what? We're the government. We could tell you that you can't charge people this, and if you do, we'll charge you for it. We'll fine you if you don't take care of these people. And that's the thing. People that have money at this point in time have to take people, we kind of all have to take care of each other. It's not just oh, this person doesn't have enough for that or can't do that, then they're screwed. They can't live there. And I know a lot of, water and utility, water, gas, and electric, a lot of those places. I know Rocky Mountain Power is kind of being pretty forgiving. They're saying they won't shut off anything during this time, but you will have a bill at the end of all this, so it's it's one of those realizations that it's how long is this going to go on for? And if you're talking all of your bills for a 6-month period, just piling up, when everybody walks outside and all of a sudden the sun's shining, what do you have left? A lot of these people aren't going to have a place to go back to because their own business is shut down. They just couldn't stay afloat. They couldn't pay their rent. They couldn't pay their taxes, couldn't do anything. So they're just going to dissolve. I wouldn't put it past anything to, at the end of this, we're going to see a lot of vacancies for buildings, a lot of vacancies for houses, a lot of these bank-owned houses and bank-owned buildings. And you got to think too, we throw all this money at banks trying to bail them out, years back, and continue to do so. left and right for certain banks. And this all is going to result in a fat paycheck to all these banks, all this interest, all these, all these companies that basically have money and that don't need the people to run. They just basically pick up the phone and make a phone call and say, okay, well, where's my money? Because you're living in the house that I own. And that's just going to snowball.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's very probable. It's really hard to see exactly how all of this unpaid money is going to get resolved. In a perfect scenario, maybe there could be a proper fiscal and monetary response to where they put the money in just the right places at the right times and just the right debt forgiveness at just the right times. But the thing is they're not doing that. They are the checks that we're getting, $1,200 per person. It's not even going to be here for a few more weeks. And if the more money you make, the longer it takes to get to you, and it starts to fade out, that is not even going to make a dent in this thing. Meanwhile, they're getting tons of money for all the banks and corporations and Boeing and all these people. And there's going to be more money sent our way, no doubt, because as much as they don't want to admit it, the people at the top are completely reliant on us. If none of us can pay our houses, then their whole thing collapses. All their investments and stuff just come crashing down on them. So they actually need the system to work for us. In a perfect world, maybe there could be the right money injections to solve that. I don't think we can count on that, though. I think we're going to see him continue to mess things up and be overly greedy. But I actually want to talk about this idea that I've been studying a little bit called the fourth turning. And it's this idea that society happens in 90-year cycles. And a lot of the financial people I listen to reference it. So it's kind of build up some credibility in my mind. And the author Neil Howe, I listened to one of his videos, and he kind of predicted he predicted the crisis in 2008 that's kind of led to a period of mistrust and instability, which is ultimately supposed to end up in a greater period of crisis, which then leads to a decade or so of hardship before basically a new society, a reinvigorated society, emerges with a new set of rules. And I actually decided to buy his book called The Fourth Turning, 380 pages. I'm somewhat of a slow reader. I get most of my info from videos and podcasts, but I decided I should probably read a book, and it's been great so far. So I'm going to be talking about this book quite a bit as our podcasts continue. So I just wanted to read off one of the pages from his book. It starts, "The fourth turning is history's great discontinuity. It ends one epoch and begins another. History is seasonal, and winter is coming. Like nature's winter, the secular winter can come early or late. A fourth turning can be long and difficult, brief but severe, or perhaps mild. But like winter, it cannot be averted. It must come in its turn. Here, in summary, is what the rhythms of modern history warn about America's future." And keep in mind, this book was written in 1997. So the next fourth turning is due to begin shortly after the new millennium. So shortly after we break 2000, midway through the 00 decade, around the year 2005. So he's saying that the beginning of the fourth turning, the initial crisis in which the mood changes, he predicted would happen around 2005. And this is based on 90-year cycles that go back all the way to the beginning of America. And we had the financial crisis of 2008. And he continues, "A sudden spark will catalyze a crisis mood. Remnants of the old social order will disintegrate. Political and economic trust will implode. Real hardship will beset the land with severe distress that could involve questions of class, race, nation, and empire. Yet this time of trouble will bring seeds of social rebirth. Americans will share a regret about recent mistakes and a resolute new consensus about what to do. The very survival of the nation will feel at stake. Sometime before the year 2025, America will pass through a great gate in history, commensurate with the American Revolution, the Civil War, and the twin emergencies of the Great Depression and World War II, which the Great Depression and World War II happened about 90 years ago. So that was the last fourth turning that we went through. The risk of catastrophe will be very high. The nation could erupt into insurrection or civil violence, crack up geographically, or succumb to an authoritarian rule. If there is a war, it is likely to be one of maximum risk and effort. In other words, a total war. And he talks about that later in the book a little bit, about the total war. And he basically says that we've never been at a time in human history where we had the ability to completely obliterate each other. We've never had that ability. The last war ended with us dropping the nuke, and we were the only ones who had the nuke. Now, everybody has nukes. So a total war is something that could potentially be very incomprehensible, just because the amount of hate that builds up between countries during these complete and utter wars is they would do anything to just kill the other side and just end the other side. But they've never had the ability to really do that. Now countries do. So he even describes in the book, this fourth turning is kind of like a huge test for us. You know, this could be the turning to end all turnings. If it follows the same paths as the other ones, you know, this could really be a way bigger change to kind of, you know, yeah, who knows? There's so much things to consider that could happen down that path. What do you think about that, CJ?
Well, I definitely think that this is going to result in there being a new great world power. I mean, it regardless of what country it is, it's going to be the country that handles this the best and keeps their, you know, not only their country's economy whole, but keeps their people united and keeps their people supplied and, you know, taken care of. It's like, you know, I think I was reading Switzerland, or I think it was Sweden, isn't even on lockdown right now, and their people are just, you know, living their day-to-day lives and just trying to, like, you know, avoid certain stuff. And it's had significant, you know, outlooks, but when it comes down to it, whatever country that handles this the best way is going to be the new world power. Like, you know, we always feel like the United States has this rule of thumb that, you know, if we shake our finger at you, like, that's, you know, that's like grandpa telling you, no, that's bad. But, you know, if, you know, let's say if, like, you know, if somewhere like, you know, India was to shake their finger at us, like, you know, we just laugh at them. That's like, you know, the baby compared to us, or, you know, the grandkid compared to us. So, I mean, at the end of this, you know, we're going to see a country like, you know, I don't want to say China, but I feel like that's what China's almost trying to result in, either China or Russia, because I don't believe either one of their numbers, or India for that case. But you know, they're trying to keep this persona on that everything's fine, everything's cool, we've got it taken care of, look, you guys are sucking. And that gets people to really start frowning at you. Like, you know, other countries are frowning at the way that we are handling things. And, you know, while there's been entire country lockdowns, we still have yet to do entire country lockdowns. And on top of that, we just have a stay-at-home order. Still in Utah, we have a stay-at-home order. And I mean, I guess they're just trying to get it to where you just can go to work in the store right now. But I mean, hell, I went fishing today. Not that, you know, it makes that big of a difference. Like, you know, I was out by myself, or, you know, I was with my brother and whatnot. But, you know, all day long, I seen people. There's tons of people at Smith's, tons of people on the road, tons of cars on the road, traffic almost seemed to be the exact same as it was. But, when you drove by a lot of these businesses, there was no cars. So it's gonna, like you're saying, it's just like, it really does feel like this whole 90 year thing, because after the Great Depression, that's when, you have all these grandparents and whatnot that grew up during that time that were always really strict about, like, make sure you finish your food. Don't throw away your food. Don't waste food. Like, don't waste this. Don't waste that. Like, and
that's gonna be us, dude. That's gonna be us.
Gonna be us. This is that. Like, we are going to be the people that are like, oh, you feel warm. Let me check your temperature. Not, oh, you feel kind of warm. Yeah, like with your hand, like, and we're gonna start it, like, eventually we're gonna catch up with the demand for these sanitation products and hand sanitizer, alcohol, gloves, masks. A lot of these things are gonna eventually tumble up to where we'll have a good amount to where people aren't going to be stressing about getting it as much. And I do see, like, by this time next year, grocery stores are going to have gloves for you at the front of the store for you to wear before you enter the store. And they will recommend, like, everywhere will have a sign, like, we recommend if you are sick that you please do not enter this facility, or if you've been sick in the last 48 hours, like 72 hours, that we ask that you wear a mask and that you wear protective gear or whatever. Like, this is what it's going to result in, especially with the way that we've handled it, and with people still being out and about. And we're seeing more cases every day than we had before. We're seeing more deaths each day than we had before. And yeah, they're kind of evening up, but let's see. Yesterday, that was the most cases I've ever seen, just globally, which is 94,000. I guess today. And in the United States, we had 2,000 people die. Like 2,035. And that's, to me, like, we are basically at this point to where we're going to surpass all these countries in deaths, and we're going to be like, woohoo, we tested everybody. Like, are we tested the most people, but are we really being responsible about it? Are we testing the people that need to be tested? Are we, are we really keeping everybody home? Are if people aren't staying home, is that what's causing the spread? Like, we should be getting into all this science. Like, it just, when it comes down to it, like, there's 1.7 million cases now. We'll round up 400 cases. So out of 1.7 million cases, 376 have been recovered. And 100,000 of them have died. Like, that's a pretty, like, sad looking picture when you think of it, because that shows that, just under a third of the people that have been, like, getting through this virus have died.
Yeah, definitely. So the 2,000 deaths that were seen in the U.S., I ran some numbers from the 2017 data, which I believe is the latest data that's out right now, about the cause of death for different people in the U.S. And I believe there was about 600,000 deaths around that every year from heart disease, which is the leading cause of death. And if you go ahead and divide that by 365, the number that I came to was about 1,700. So we're now losing over 2,000 people per day in the US, meaning that the coronavirus is now the leading cause of death, which I haven't seen a headline or an article proclaiming that, which is kind of interesting. I would imagine that would be something that people should know. And that's, like we said, not including the people that can't get tested. But yeah, it's a very interesting paradigm happening here, because the thing that has given us the most strength through these past, from World War II until now, which is basically how long we've been the world's superpower, maybe 60, 70, 80 years, something like that. We haven't been the superpower for lifetimes and lifetimes. It's not something that's set in stone. The thing that's made us the superpower is our freedom and our non-conformist to like a government ruling power. Is kind of every individual gets to choose his own destiny. And that's exactly what's killing us in this, which is just such a weird thing to think about, because we're taught that freedom is this unquestionably good thing that always gives the best result no matter what. Yet in this situation, I mean, we're 3 or 4 times higher than the country beneath us, and we're growing way faster than any other country. And like I said, we're kind of leveling off. We're probably seeing our first peak right around now. The whole world is kind of seeing their first peak, but the real test is going to be to see what countries open up too early, and what countries are in it for the long game. Because really, the ideal thing to do, in my opinion, would be to just basically stay closed for the next 12 months. Stay as strict of lockdown as you have now. Keep that for about 12 months, which is unthinkable. But there's going to be a lot of countries that defy that, and there's going to be a second huge outbreak. So we will see. That's one of the things I am most curious about, because it's not just going to go away. And China is really amplifying this story that they've got it under control, and they absolutely do not. People are fleeing Wuhan. They just barely opened it again, and 55,000 people got up and left that day because they are just want to get out of that town, that city, so bad because of how bad it is. And oh my God, I'm so glad we're not in China, because it's just so much more authoritarian there. The people, I really hope that they just revolt and just completely overthrow the Chinese Communist Party. If we're going to see a world conflict, I see it starting in China, especially because they're having food problems as well.
Yeah, and I mean, I hope the Chinese government doesn't come after us for this one. But I mean, it's something that I expect to see, and I know that they are fed up with the way that things have been there, with the famine and the hunger and the, I have no idea. Nobody knows how many people have died there because of this, because they're just most likely not keeping track. And it's really sad because all these people, like you said, they're fleeing and they're trying to just get away and do what they can. And, we're going to, but like, what country right now is going to accept a refugee? Like, you got to think about that. Like, no, like, we're not accepting any. Like, nowhere's going to, like, you're going to hop a border and they're going to have suits on and they're going to transport you back to your fucking country, because at this point in time, they're not taking any chances. I mean, even to cross states in the United States, you have to, like, fill out a form now. You can't just cross. You have to let them know where you've been, where are you going, what are you going to do. And, like, this is, like, when you're going to other countries, and, like, now you have to do that from state to state. Like, it's just, these people are going to be, like, stuck in China, and as long as China doesn't do anything about it, then it's just going to be I always use the snowball effect, but it's just this snowball rolling down a hill, and it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and eventually it's going to crash into something, and that explosion will be the Chinese people standing up for their humanity and for their own rights to just, have basic human rights. And that day I will definitely applaud the Chinese people.
Yeah, I agree. And one thing that gives me hope, I know we talked about a possible World War III, and the way that I see kind of the average human is they don't really like hold resentment for the people of another country. It, like, in my mind, it would seem so far-fetched that the government would be able to convince us that we need to go to war and start killing Chinese people, and I hope that all the countries kind of see that same thing, that it seems like the general view in the world is not that it's the people in the other countries that are the threat. It's the people that are in power that are the threat. So I feel like the world's powers would have a really hard time convincing the population that they need to give up their life and fight another country. You know, that there would just be such a logical error in that. At least that's how I see it in my head. But you know, we've been going for quite a while now. I really have to pee, so I say we go ahead and call this. Before we end it, there was some local news I wanted to touch on. The returning missionaries here in Utah, a couple of them have been testing positive with COVID and have got their families sick. So, you know, if that's something we need to keep a closer eye on in Utah, we'll definitely provide some updates if we see anything more about that. From the missionary that tested positive, I don't believe he was part of that huge group that came back where the over like 1,000 people gathered at the airport. I think this was somebody who came back in a different wave of missionaries, a smaller wave, from what I'm hearing. Also, in the Salt Lake City Amazon warehouse, there's been a few reported cases of coronavirus, and I believe that's the only warehouse in the Salt Lake area. So, you know, that means a good amount of the packages, the Amazon packages we're getting in Salt Lake, you know, in that area, there has been confirmed coronavirus cases. So we will see how that progresses. And also, I wanted to say, I just barely heard about an hour ago that Burning Man was canceled. I probably wasn't going to go this year. I know a lot of people, a lot of my friends were going to go, and it's an absolutely amazing scene, absolutely amazing ideology. And I don't think you've ever been, CJ, but I feel like you would like it. But yeah, I mean, that's like 5 months from now. Yeah, you would love it for sure. Hopefully, a lot of our listeners can kind of resonate with that a little bit. Some of them probably think we're a little crazy, but yeah, it's a great scene. They're canceled. They're like 5-6 months out from now. So, you know, and a lot of those guys, they're in the entertainment industry, and they're probably being hit really hard by this. You know, they're not being able to get together and work on their projects. They're already having financial problems, and Burning Man is such a huge financial burden. Yeah, so I guess they decided to shut it down, which kind of surprises me. I thought they would wait until, you know, months went by and we for sure knew this was going to be around. But I guess they're feeling it hard enough, and they want to go ahead and close that down, which is a really big thing. I don't think we're going to be seeing events happen for, you know, the next 6 months. I think we should all pretty much assume that there's not going to be any of these huge group gatherings. So with that, we'll go ahead and end this off. Was there anything? So yeah, we'll go ahead. All of the links that we've been sending each other, CJ, you can just go ahead and post all those. There's a couple we didn't touch on today, as usual. But yeah, go ahead and get those posted in the group. I don't think we have anyone really in the group. I'm going to start inviting people. But yeah, we just want to have it there just so all of our listeners can start gathering, so we can kind of send you to a place where, you know, you can have someone, it's a kind of a community that we can all talk about this. And if you want to get the good details, because obviously me and CJ, we're on the hunt for the good details. I don't care if it's optimistic or pessimistic. We're looking for what's really happening as soon as it's happening. We want to know, and we'll go ahead and get that posted. So give us a like or a follow there. Is there anything you wanted to end with, CJ?
Yeah, just, I mean, any news that you guys get is, you know, if you think it would be news to us and you haven't heard it from us yet, then throw it our way. I mean, we'll definitely be pretty active on that. And I mean, I've got it pretty much set to where we both get notifications whenever those happen. So if you guys want to send any message, you got any comments or anything, go ahead and throw those there, and we'll definitely be responding and going back and forth.
Yeah, that's a good resource. I didn't really think of that. If the listeners run into some stuff, you know, obviously there's way too much news for just me and CJ to keep up with. So if listeners go ahead and post stuff on there, then you might hear it on our next show. So with that, we'll go ahead and close out. I really appreciate you talking with me, as usual, CJ. But thanks for your listening, guys. We'll see you next week.
Yep. Take it easy, guys.